Hello adventurers, my name is Chance, welcome to my Spellbook, and thank you so much for taking a look at the 72nd episode of our feat series. Today we're going to be going over one of the newest additions to the feats. We're going over Fighting Initiate today, which is found in the Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, and it follows a similar theme amongst a handful of these feats, namely Eldritch Adept and Metamagic Adept as well, and that is so far as to say that this is Wizards of the Coast's attempt at almost pseudo-multiclassing, if that makes sense, allowing you to take other features from other classes without necessarily taking levels in them, which isn't inherently a bad thing at all. If anything, I'm relatively interested to see what builds this leads to, especially since they can be taken more than once, which is likely to lead to some interesting exploits, especially as the Wizards of the Coast 5e kind of meta expands and as more additions are added. Should be very interesting. In any case, before we dive into Fighting Initiate's prerequisites and descriptions, if you'd like to check out the full playlist in its entirety, please do click on that little eye icon up top there. Alternatively, wait until the end of the video and click on the end screen. Now let's move right along to its prerequisite and description. Under prerequisite, you do need to have proficiency with at least one martial weapon, and its description reads as followed. Learn one fighting style option of your choice from the fighter class. If you already have a style, the one you choose must be different. Whenever you reach a level that grants the ability score improvement feature, you can replace this feat's fighting style with another one from the fighter class that you don't have. Very interesting stuff, so there is a degree of customizability at the end there. I think it's fairly obvious which class is likely to gain the most bang for their buck out of this. However, since fighting styles can be so wide and varied, especially when you factor in the recent additions through Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, it does lend itself to more creative minds, which I certainly like. In any case, let's move along here to the walkthrough. It really is relatively simple. You learn one fighting style, and you can switch that fighting style out at realistically every 4th level for most classes, with a handful of notable exceptions. That being said, however, there's a ton of fighting styles. I think there's 11 in total now, since Tasha's added in a handful of new ones. And if you are familiar with the end goal of this channel, then you'll know we would have had to go into the fighting styles at one point or another anyways, so the next about a dozen or so videos are going to be all about the fighting styles. They'll be relatively quick to jam out, but to give you a quick overview, whether or not you're using melee weapons, ranged weapons, or just trying to bolster your defense, I can guarantee you're going to find a ton of options to your liking. The biggest downside is I do think that this feat replaces another, which I'm not necessarily a huge fan of. However, I'll leave that to the jury. Now let's move on to my personal thoughts. In terms of the class likely to gain the most benefit out of this, I want to say the Rogue, for a handful of different reasons. First and foremost, rogues, despite having a very strong melee presence in Dungeons and Dragons, they don't have access to any of the fighting styles, which is kind of a hindrance to them. In addition to that, they get several more feats than any other class, which definitely lends itself to the more utility aspect of this feat. As so far as to say, if you have a playstyle that you want to try out and it doesn't end up working out, you can just switch it out whenever your next ability score improvement rolls around. And through extension, the rogues have a nasty habit of maxing out their relevant stats quite quickly due to the fact that they do get several more feat or ASI improvements. I also brought up the fact that this feat replaces another feat currently existing within the game, at least for the most part. And of course I'm talking about Martial Adept. If you don't know what it is, it lets you gain access to one of the Battlemaster's combat maneuvers, and it is almost just a carbon copy version of one of the fighting styles that is now granted through Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So I think it's fair to say that Martial Adapt is, at the very least, not as good as it used to be. It might be a good way for you to get a second additional maneuver, but outside of that, I don't know. It is what it is. That being said, let me know what you think of Fighting Initiate down beneath in the comments section. Be sure to mention any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns you may have, and which fighting style is your favorite, and how are you planning on integrating this into your character. That being said, I hope you all have a great day, and as always, happy adventuring.